Hey, what's up everybody? It's Dowden. I'm going to be doing another one of my feedback videos from my students and from fellow producers that have sent in their tracks to me to give them my personal feedback. This is a great way for you as a producer to learn from not necessarily their mistakes, but maybe their mistakes and maybe things that they can improve on in their mixes and their tracks that I'm going to be proposing in this video. You can take and learn from that from your own tracks. So I got my trusty sub pack on so I can hear the low end. I have my headphones and I'm just going to dive right into it. Let's have about 6 tracks, I believe, today. So let's go ahead. First one is by Baina. He is a fellow producer from Toronto, is a friend of mine, and he has been writing some pretty cool music lately, actually. So let's go ahead and take a listen to the first track. And it would help if my headphones were plugged into my sub pack, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, and the power is not on. That would also help. If you don't have a sub pack, I would definitely recommend it. They are really handy, and if sub pack, if you're watching, wouldn't mind an endorsement, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Okay, so kick and bass feel really nice, real sub heavy. Kick and bass are both punchy. They might be a little bit too quiet for the mix. No, actually they sound alright. But there's a bit of that panning back and forth, kind of ringing, high-end resonant sound. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. The high-end ringing is just a little bit too sharp in my opinion. It's a little bit too resonant, so maybe just dial that down just a tiny bit. And the way that you can do that is, what you can do is grab an EQ and you sweep the frequencies and you kind of get a really sharp frequency band, you push it really high up and you kind of sweep back and forth. You'll hear where that really sharp like ringing kind of sits, but it's a little bit tricky sometimes when you're first getting used to it, because when you're pushing the EQ that hard, sometimes everything sounds like it's a resonant frequency because you're really pushing that resonant frequency. So you have to kind of go back and forth, look for that really sweet spot of that, like that sound that you don't really want to hear, and then dial down a little bit, flip the pushing of the EQ, of the boosting, and then just kind of cut that specific part just a little bit, and then you can find and reduce on the frequencies. And the opposite way works as well. You can kind of lower the EQ band all the way down to the bottom and sweep back and forth across the EQ, and then you'll hear when that sound gets kind of taken out. Probably put a little bit more midsection of the bass, like the second octave of bass could be a little bit louder, so it's a little bit more present. Those synths are kind of cool, but they are a little bit off beat, which I think it's intentional, but it's a little distracting and not in a good way. So it's cool, but that just sounds pretty cool. I like that there. It's like a little bit loose, it's cool. But before I didn't like how it was a little bit offbeat. Ooh, that's really cool. Probably try filtering out the drums here a little bit to not be so sharp, because they are a little bit hard on the ears. Ooh, that's heavy. Really cool track. Okay, so overall, it's a pretty cool track. The main issue I'm finding with the mix is that there's a lot of high end and it's a bit shrill. So there's a little bit of too much shrillness going on in the track. Ooh, that's cool. Especially in that like cowbell sound, in case you couldn't tell by my amazing instrument skills from my mouth. It's a bit sharp. Same thing with the EQ. Just go through with an EQ, find that really strong frequency that's really ear piercing, and just dial it down a little bit. The white noise is a bit loud too. Yeah, again, see, like a lot of these sounds are really ear piercing, and I have to keep turning down my headphones here. But overall, the mix is pretty good. I think just too much high end, maybe 1 or 2 dB on most of these instruments would be enough just to reduce that high end. And then in contrast, your low end could be pushed a little bit higher, or it'll feel a little bit pushed higher because that high end is going to be a little bit quieter. So overall, really cool track, actually. I really enjoyed it. It's really unique in a way that it's like really glitchy and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Good job. Next track is by Bubs. It's called Lobotomy. Oh, and if you want to go to his profile, if you like that track, it's Trevor-Baina, B-E-H-N-A. And then this next track's called Lobotomy by Bubs. I already took a listen to this one. It's not really my style. It's actually more like a hard style track, so it's nothing that I've ever written, but let's take a listen to it. Not that I mind the hardstyle, I actually like hardstyle, but it's not something I usually listen to. Ooh. Okay, for this one, the kick's pretty nice, pretty good hardstyle kick. There's quite a bit of bass in there. With hardstyle, you usually don't have to actually too much bass in the low end because it's so fast and so much, you don't really need it. And the bass is sort of sorted that you don't really need to worry so much about. It's kind of like really hard techno as well. Like there's a little bit less bass because it's so intense already and so fast. Not expecting that. Overall, I'd say that it's a little bit messy overall in the mix. The low end sounds pretty good. There's not really a distinct feel in the mid sections and the high end. Like I can hear the hat coming in. It's like boom, booch, 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 and it's coming in on the offbeat, but it's kind of hard to distinct that. So maybe turning up that the hi-hat just a little bit more, or layering it with a better hi-hat. Ooh, that's badass. Pardon my language. Yeah, the low end's really nice. Everything else could be a little bit louder. So what I would suggest in a situation like this, instead of turning your kick down, instead of turning all your other instruments up, you can just turn your kick down. So you just turn your kick down, and then the bass, if it's in congruency with the kick there, turn them both down like 2 or 3 dB, and then by contrast, you'll be able to turn everything else up. It's not like you have to go into every individual instrument, turn it up 2 dB, just turn down the 2 loudest elements, and then everything else by contrast will be louder. So that is Lobotomy by Bubs. His is Andy-Bubs, his SoundCloud URL. Okay, and we have Anima again. So I already did feedback on Anima's track not last video, but the one before that, I believe. And this is with Aves Valera. I think I'm saying that right. I'm a fan of both these artists, actually. So this is really cool. Anima and I have been working together a lot. All right, so let's go ahead and listen to this Anima track. Really nice hats. So I'm just gonna stop right here because already I'm noticing something that's great. There is a great groove going on with just those shakers. Something that, especially in progressive house, the genres that I make and the genres that I follow, that groove is really, really important for this style. It makes you feel a little bit loose, but also in the vibe of the track. So if you are struggling with getting your songs to sound a little bit groovier, a little bit more swing, that's pretty much what you need to focus on, is making your songs feel a little bit more, have a little bit more swing, which makes them feel groovy and vice versa. The way you can do this is just by offsetting sounds by, a couple milliseconds, velocity changes, adding MIDI effects like velocity changes to make not all the sounds just repeat the exact same way and sound robotic. You make it sound more organic, more humanized, a little bit of room for error per se, where not everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. Push things a little bit to the left, push things a little bit to the right, panning back and forth. All these things add to a sense of organic feel, and this can really help the groove and the swing of the track. Nice. Oh, the subs are really nice. Sub and the bass are sitting really well. He has a lot of layers going on, which is really good if you listen closely. Maintaining interest with that white noise and that impact. Cool, cool. Cool vocal. Trying to find something to give feedback on, but okay, the only thing I'd say maybe here is that there's a lot going on in the high end. It's kind of hard to hear what's going on at that part. Okay, so touching on this part, there is a lot going on, and the hardest, or the easiest way to fix this issue is arrangement, is not putting those instruments in the overlapping frequencies in the first place. So if two sounds are occupying the same frequency range, they're not gonna have room to breathe. So you can either take one of the elements out, or you could use some proper EQing, some sidechain compressing. But first and foremost, the most important thing is arrangement. Choosing what sounds to go where. If you have a really, really high sound and the exact same frequencies on another sound, putting them together is going to cause you some problems. So try your best to avoid that. And if you can't avoid that, I do have some 2-minute tutorials on the channel that go over overlapping frequencies. I can put the link in the description below. For sidechain compression, for just overlapping frequencies, the EQ, etc. So just check the description. I'll put the link to that, and definitely watch that if you want to learn how to fix that. Cool. Very cool track, really cool energy, definitely like a peak time track. If you like that, that's Anima Artiste, so it's ANMA ARTISTE. Going to Mia, brackets Blind Cobra from the Stars.
There's nothing to hide at all.
So,
is there anything in
haven't listened to this yet. It's more like an experimental track. Okay. Nice low end. Kick is punchy. The snare is a little too snappy to the point where it's a little hard on the ears. So there's, again, going with the EQ, scooping up those frequencies that are a little bit ear piercing. Reminds me of like video game music from when I used to play as a kid. Chord change, cool. It's not much feedback overall, honestly. It's kind of it's an interesting track for sure. It's definitely intriguing. The only thing I would say maybe is a little bit more clarity in the mix overall. Just proper EQing of sounds, proper placement of sounds, making sure that you can hear everything in its own space, because there's not a lot going on, but there's some elements going on that don't really have the definition that you would want in a clean mix. So like that hat's a little bit in the background. The snare sounds a little bit too far in the background with a lot of that reverb. Although I guess it's supposed to with the long tail, but hard to hear those hats really well. That one was Bubble_Dream, if you want to follow them. And Slower Than Trees by Elric Setti. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. There's another ambient track. Slower Than Trees, that's a nice name. Try and turn this up a bit. It's gonna be kind of tricky to give feedback on because there's not really much going on. Very ambient. 10-minute long track, just a few elements. Well, I can't give too much feedback on this. Essentially what I'm going to say about this one is there needs to be more stuff. It's a 10-minute, 11-second song. It's very ambient, but it's almost too ambient. It's almost like you just took a song and just expanded it over 10 times. Cool sounds. Nice chords, very, very ambient. I really like I like it. This would be good for like if you're like getting a massage or you're trying to meditate or something like that. But overall, to give feedback on it, I would need more elements. So overall, I like it though. So that's good. Sorry, I can't get more feedback on that. That's Elric Settee, ELRIKSETTEE on SoundCloud if you want to follow that for some ambient music. Okay, last we have Asteria by Zarya. So Zarya is a student of mine that I'm definitely always mentioning in my videos because she is a rock star. She's always working with me to improve herself. She's always sending in her tracks for feedback, and it's just really, really great to see her improving. Let's take a listen to this track. This is a track we actually worked on together, I believe. She sent it for me for feedback already once before, is what I mean. The bass and the sub are very loud. Mix sounds good though. Maybe the bass is just maybe a little bit too loud. Yeah, the sub and the kick definitely is a bit too loud. It's a very long kick. It feels like the kick and the bass are really long sounding. So it's a little overwhelming in the mix, especially with the sub pack on. I can really feel it. The hats sound really good the way they are. Maybe, and for this track specifically, I'd say maybe shorten the kick a little bit by fading out the tail end of it, turning down the sub of the kick a little bit, or the entire kick overall, the sub bass a little bit overall, maybe 1 or 2 dB on both those at least. Probably 2 dB on the kick, and maybe 1.5, 2 dB on the bass. Yeah, like 1.5 each. And then the rest of the mix sounds pretty good. A lead could probably come up a bit. Bam, bam. That could probably come up too. That's really nice. Yeah, so just overall the kick and bass are a little bit too loud. Sometimes it's hard to judge how loud our kick and bass need to be, especially because all kicks sound a little bit different. The basses are sometimes in different keys or different. They resonate differently with the room or the speakers that we have. So it's really tricky to get that perfect level. My biggest advice for that is to find reference tracks that sound really similar to your style, really similar to your sound, and load those up and really compare the volumes. Choose few different tracks because 1 or 2 tracks aren't sometimes enough. I like to use 2 or 3 tracks for sure. In all my tracks, I drag and drop them into my DAW, and I listen to them near the end of my mix, and sometimes when I'm writing too, just to try and see what I could do to achieve that mix even before in that arrangement. So that's a good track by Zarya. Big fan of the hats. They sound really crispy and really nice. They have their space in the mix too. Okay, cool. So that is everything for this feedback video. If you want to get your track critiqued by me, you can send me an email at dowden@dowdenmusic.com. You can send it onto my mailing list. I'll put a link in the description below. The mailing list gets you tons of freebies, checklists, feedback videos, all these tips and tricks that I'll be sending in my emails, and discount codes on my courses, things like that. So definitely check that out, and make sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up if you learned something.